What's up everybody, Mandak? Welcome to a brand new video, and today we're going to be doing another Godzilla Minus Zero news and updates. Today we are diving on into an interview with Takashi Yamazaki that gives some context as to why the movie might be titled Minus Zero. We've also got some crazy theories about where this movie's heading, from the oxygen destroyer to the three-headed dragon himself, King Ghidorah. So let's get on into it. Thank you guys all so much for checking this out. Make sure you subscribe because we have so much Godzilla Zero content coming out. Be here for it, be part of the hype for it. Let's do this together, D-Force. I cannot wait. I'm gonna have so much fun leading up to this movie. Starting out with some artwork like always, this first piece comes to us from Pyrus Terran. This is their Godzilla Minus One charging up art. It's so freaking cool. I love the pose Godzilla's in. He looks very, very T-Rex here. I love the way the energy is beaming out of his mouth. That looks sick. This is a very, very cool one, so I wanted to show this off. Very cool stuff. This piece comes to us from Kuronosuke Boy. I've shown off some of their artwork before, but this one's very, very cool. I don't know if this is a real photo that they took that they photoshopped Godzilla into, or if this is all artwork. I'm genuinely not sure, but you can see Godzilla destroying the distant city here. This is almost like an alternate perspective of the Ginza train sequence. It is very, very cool and very well done. I think this was so sick, so just wanted to show this one off to show Godzilla out there in the distance. Very cool. Finally here, this piece comes to us from GNA, and this is GNA's first ever Godzilla Minus Zero fan art. GNA is one of my favorite Godzilla artists. I always look forward to seeing GNA's artwork, and this one's very cool with the Minus 0.0 built into Godzilla's cheek. Like, that's the new cheek scar for Godzilla. I thought that was just very fun. In the last video, if you haven't seen it, go check it out. We go in depth with the Godzilla Minus Zero title card announcement, where I give what is probably the most honest and realistic reason for why the movie might be titled Godzilla Minus Zero, the reason why I think makes the most sense, and we go in depth with the end of the Minus One era and the beginning of the Minus Zero era. But for now, we're jumping on into our wider discussions about what's actually going to be happening in this movie, starting with the title itself and why it might even be called that beyond just the logical explanation I presented in the last video. The name Minus Zero is a little more interesting than it seems. It's not simply just the follow-up to Godzilla Minus One, and so they called it Godzilla Minus Zero. As far as I'm aware, the most direct comparison we can draw here is actually to the sci-fi novel Minus Zero. In a Q&A with Takashi Yamazaki held by Movie Walker Press back in December 2023, following the immediate release of Godzilla Minus One, Yamazaki discusses a lot about Godzilla Minus One. First of all, as far as that iconic G logo goes, maybe there isn't a Godzilla in it after all. I still see it in there. I still see it. I still believe that there could be. I believe that could be the intention. But what Yamazaki specifically says about it is that the G logo came about in a really strange way. It happened when they were doing the start of the promotional campaign for Minus One. They wanted an instantly iconic image, like the Jurassic Park fossil logo, that people instantly recognized as being from their movie. This is why they also used that logo so often during promotion, was to make sure everybody associated it with Minus One. During the storyboarding process on set, a producer asked Yamazaki to write a cool G on top of the cover, so he wrote this in the top corner of the paper. Now, that seems like already a story that maybe misses some of the more meaningful context, or maybe not. Maybe it's just purely coincidence, but the G always has looked to me very similar to the Project G, which was the original title for Godzilla 1954. It always looks very similar to the G from the original screenplay for Godzilla 54. It also has those very, I think, obvious Godzilla features in it. So maybe that's part of Yamazaki designing a cool G. He did so, he wrote it in the top corner of the paper, and that was that. From there, the PR department eventually reached out asking if they could use that G as the logo for the film because they didn't have any visuals ready for Godzilla Fest 2022. He was surprised to see how often this logo was used during marketing and how impactful it eventually turned out to be. It's also possible at some point maybe some modifications were made to his initial G sketch. As far as the Minus One title goes, this is where we get our most direct indication of where the Minus Zero title might have come from. Producer Shuji Abe realized that Yamazaki's film Sunset on 3rd Street wasn't very catchy or marketable, so he added always to the beginning of the title, making it Always Sunset on 3rd Street, but always was written in English to give it a more youthful appeal, and it wound up working incredibly well. This trick worked so well to get a younger audience interested in the film that Yamazaki's films produced with Abe from that point on always included bilingual titles. Abe is the one who came up with the title for Minus One and sold Yamazaki on the idea that Japan goes from Ground Zero 2-. But he's also a huge fan of Hirose Tarashi's sci-fi novel Minus Zero. This is a sci-fi novel in which somebody travels back in time during the Tokyo fire raids, or travels back in time to the Tokyo fire raids, and has some very strange interactions with other members of their family. I have not read the novel, so I cannot tell you too much about it, but I know it takes place in World War II using time travel. I don't think any of that at all has any relevance to Godzilla Minus Zero. I don't think that's going to play into the plot. I don't think any time travel will be involved. I would be downright amazed if anything in the movie deals with time travel. It's just too big and bold of a sci-fi concept, especially when you remember Takashi Yamazaki openly stated he felt that Mechagodzilla was too far outlandish for the world of his Minus One sequel. So if he is doing a Minus One sequel that he thinks Mechagodzilla is too outlandish for, I highly doubt sci-fi time travel will be involved either. But anyways, Abe is a huge fan of the Minus Zero novel, and so there could be a connection there, but Takashi Yamazaki admits here he's actually not sure if there is a direct connection between these two titles. It's also important to note that Shuji Abe passed away in December of 2023, just after the release of Godzilla Minus One. If he was such a fan of the novel Minus Zero, it seems likely to me that as being a lifelong friend and collaborator of Takashi Yamazaki, Yamazaki might honor him by titling the next film in the same style of Godzilla Minus One, while also paying homage to one of Abe's favorite stories. It seems likely to me that Minus Zero could be a little tribute to late producer Shuji Abe. Yamazaki then states, which this is not relevant to the sequel, but I just thought this stuff was interesting. It's interesting about Godzilla Minus One, so I'll go through it really fast. He stated he worked super hard on the way Godzilla walks in Minus One, wanting him to be very different from other iterations of Godzilla. He was also very particular about the way Godzilla held the train in his mouth, and even filmed a reference video of himself with the train in his mouth as a VFX demo for people to see. The finale in the village was, in fact, a throwback to old Godzilla films and Ultraman episodes, as a lot of those took place in rural landscapes. Yamazaki reveals that there is this kind of rule that Godzilla doesn't eat humans, and it's even one of Toho's regulations about the character, which is why, during the Oto Island sequence, Yamazaki worked backwards from the idea that Godzilla would be eating the soldiers on Oto Island. He says that instead, he opted to have Godzilla bite some of the soldiers before throwing them through the air, because it makes Godzilla seem even more cruel. He says he wanted to emphasize how Godzilla is a cruel creature. He says by making Godzilla eat humans, he actually becomes less of Godzilla and more of a beast. To Yamazaki, Godzilla is not just some animal. He's not craving food. He is a wild god. I thought that was so cool. He then jokes that it's hard to say what Godzilla eats in Minus One, but it's definitely not tuna, referencing the 1998 film. Finally, one of the questions asks why Yamazaki included Mothra's motif and the Faroe Island prayer in Godzilla Minus One. Yamazaki explains that it was simply just to not tamper with Akira Ifukube's original music, as they felt those songs fit the sequences best, and so they wanted to leave those songs unaltered in the sequences. I think that's great. I think it works very well. Ifukube was very famous for altering themes. Obviously, that Faroe Islands march, which is used all throughout King Kong vs. Godzilla, is also very synonymous with the end credits for Godzilla vs. Destroya. Ifukube was so famous for reusing theme songs that Varan's theme becomes Rodan/Ghidorah's theme, becomes the monster battle theme, and then back to Rodan's theme. I think changing the context of the themes in this movie is a very Ifukube thing to do. To reuse some of his music and really not alter it all that much, but change the context in which it's used to give it a whole new meaning, that feels right up Ifukube's alley. So I thought that was very cool. But what about this GDG logo itself? It is different from the G from the Godzilla Minus One logo. This one's a lot less sharp. It's a lot more rounded. That Godzilla face is no longer there. It looks a little more like it's melting. So what is going on in there? There is tons of speculation, but starting out, before we even get to the G, we have to talk about the Minus. I thought this was so cool. Strock noticed, I don't know how to say their name, noticed that if you look here, the Minus, supposedly, I have seen this represented in other artworks. Like I believe Shinji Nishikawa actually has done this before. This supposedly represents the Shinden with the back tail wing. Shinden flying in. That I could very much see being intentional. That seems very cool. Which, if that's the case, this new Minus logo has such a different shape, but a very unique shape. You've got the two bulbs, you've got this metal bar connecting them, you've got this little part that sticks off the bulb almost like a handle or a latch, almost the exact shape of the oxygen destroyer Destroyer. I'm not saying that the Oxygen Destroyer will for sure be used in this movie, but I am saying if it is, what a cool way to foreshadow that. If there truly is deeper meaning in the G logos, which also, let's say, Yamazaki maybe didn't intend for this to have the Godzilla face in it, but it became so iconic that it has a Godzilla. I mean, to me, it just is so clearly Godzilla, but it became so iconically known as a Godzilla in the shape of the G. And Yamazaki has spoken about how things like he wishes he included more Easter eggs, like Noriko's hair being put up before the Ginza attack, referencing her eventual connection to Godzilla. He wishes he included more Easter eggs like that. Well, now's the time. Maybe this is our first step toward that. Maybe this really does indicate the Oxygen Destroyer. I thought that was a cool theory, so I wanted to bring it up here. I thought that was fun. Meanwhile, as far as the shape of the G itself, if it is Godzilla, it looks a little different than the last Godzilla. So FDNC speculates that maybe it's Godzilla with the top of his head blowing off, like he's still regenerating. And I suppose I could see that if this is supposed to be Godzilla's head, this would be like the head blown off, the smoke blowing backwards. I think that that's kind of a fun theory. I don't personally buy into that one, but I thought that was cool. Okay, I don't have any links for this, but I have seen many people theorizing about what the new villain of this new movie is going to be. Obviously, many of us think that there's going to be an enemy monster that Godzilla fights in the Godzilla Minus One sequel. A lot of us think Godzilla is going to be going up against an opponent, and I have seen some interesting ones. So some of the more interesting ones that I don't personally see is people are really reading into the shape of the G. Some of the theories I've heard is that it looks like Anguirus's head. I don't see this. I think the idea is that if you rotate it, it looks like Anguirus's head, where it's like the crown of Anguirus sticking off the top here and then the back of it's his head. I don't totally see that. I've seen some crazy takes, and I thought it was just going to be one person, but it was 3 people saying they thought that it was Shimo. It isn't Shimo. They don't have the rights to Shimo, guys. It's just simply not Shimo. And then I have seen some people thinking that it looks like the silhouette of King Ghidorah, and I don't see that, and I don't think that they're going to be doing some mental gymnastics where we have to rotate it. If there's anything to read into this G, I believe that it's to be read into standing up, and I do think that there is something we can glean from the G itself. So let's talk about what those theories are. When I looked at this, there was only one thing that came to mind, and I could be dead off about this, but this shape immediately stuck out to me as being its own shape. It's almost unconnected from the rest of the G. It almost immediately stuck out to me as being the shape of a little blob flying away. It even spells goo. Goo! Although I don't think that the goo is intentional, but I do like that. That's fun. Maybe I'm dead wrong about this. Maybe the goo means nothing. But I can't help but see Hedorah's flying form in the top of the goo, and then these maybe could even represent his 2 big iconic eyeballs. I don't know. Maybe I'm way off about that. But I cannot help but see Hedorah's flying form here. It was literally the very first thing I thought when I saw the new G, was that looks like Hedorah. Of course, Takashi Yamazaki at New York Comic Con, when asked if there was any Godzilla movie he could remake, said he would like to remake Godzilla vs. Hedorah, as the time has finally come. Technology has finally caught up to the idea of Hedorah. Yamazaki, of course, has previously spoken about the fact that he waited to make Godzilla Minus One until he felt technology caught up with his vision. So maybe it's time. Maybe technology finally caught up with Hedorah's vision and it's time to introduce him in the Minus One sequel. Could be. Following my initial tweet, Devin Osborne speculated that this could be Hedorah flying, while this is the entire body of Godzilla down below and they're fighting. Master Geek made this very awesome mock-up of the logo turning into Hedorah with the slime coming down, you know, the goo with Hedorah melting into it. I thought this was really cool as well. I thought this one was so sick. The idea that like almost Hedorah globbed onto and is soaking over the G. He didn't stop there. Here is Master Geek's new Hedorah Minus Zero artwork. Super cool. Love this spouting pollution into the background. This is a super awesome one. Looks like he's also got some rubble stuck into him as well. Like, I think this is supposed to be a smokestack coming out of him. This is some rubble. He's got Godzilla spines on him. This is, in my opinion, a very awesome redesign of Hedorah, taking inspiration from Final Wars Hedorah while introducing some real body horror elements. Like, what is going on here with these protrusions coming out of him? I actually love this, making Hedorah like almost something of a Godzilla mutation in this new film is an idea I've pitched that I think would be a fantastic direction to take this sequel, one that I would be incredibly excited to see them head down. So I just had to show that off. Meanwhile, there's kind of an even more popular thing that people see in the G. Beyond Hedorah, and this is the one that I've come to believe, I think that this one's a much more accurate one. After seeing this, I no longer see Hedorah. Behemoth Mode sent me over this because I saw people talking about how it's clearly a woman praying. She's got her head down, she's praying, and I couldn't see it, so I asked somebody to show it to me, and this is what Behemoth Mode drew up, and there it is! She's clearly there, and now I can't unsee it. Now when I look at the regular logo, I can just so clearly see it. Like, here's her head, head, her nose, her mouth. Here's her hands are up, she's praying. Her hair is blowing in the wind, which leads all of us to believe this is Noriko, who's obviously going to be dealing with the curse of Godzilla. She's obviously been cursed by Godzilla in some way. It's something's growing in her neck. She's going to be transforming into something probably. A lot of people think she's going to turn into a monster of some sort. Maybe she will. This is Rinko's version. This one has the same woman with her hair blowing, almost kind of hedgehog style, but it's just a different artistic interpretation of that. This one's probably my favorite. This is the solid Prison 63's Noriko transformation. She's almost curled up with her legs coming down, turning into Godzilla feet with the tail coming off of her. Personally, I don't think this movie will follow Noriko transforming into a monster. I just don't personally think or if she does, I don't think it'll be like she'll turn into a giant monster. I could see her mutating into something. I could see that happening, or maybe even setting up for a third movie, a final movie, a cap to the trilogy. I'm not sure, but I don't personally think she's going to turn into a giant alternate Godzilla, or even I don't think she's going to turn into Hedorah or whatever else, or even Biollante, but this is still very, very cool, and I like the idea of it. It's a very cool symbolic idea. But I actually think this riddle might have been solved by Dylan Connolly. I think that this makes the most sense, both from a marketing perspective and a logical perspective. Logically, what does minus zero mean? Like, if Godzilla Minus One means Japan goes from 0 to minus as Godzilla shows up, the -2 title makes more sense if they're sticking with that naming scheme. Of course, I actually think the real reason is because it's a tribute to producer Shuji Abe, but if we are going to derive a deeper meaning from this, I think Dylan Connolly has cracked the case. I like the theory. It makes a lot of sense to me. He said, hear me out. -0 equals Monster Zero. Ghidorah makes perfect sense here. I don't think Ghidorah makes perfect sense in the context of the story of Godzilla Minus One. I also am not sure he fits the world and aesthetic of Godzilla Minus One. Of course, Yamazaki has already done Ghidorah in Godzilla the Ride, which to me feels like more evidence to say we're ruling out King Ghidorah. King Ghidorah's already been used by Yamazaki, same way that he got Mechagodzilla out of the way because he couldn't use him in the Minus One universe, so he used him in Godzilla the Ride Great Clash. Ghidorah does not fit the world of Minus One. But that Ghidorah design does exist. We know that Yamazaki built off the Godzilla the Ride design to come up with Godzilla Minus One. It could be something similar happens here where he's like, I loved my portrayal of Ghidorah. I'd love to keep working with that. So he takes that, fixes up the design a little bit, introduces it into the new film. That Ghidorah obviously fit the aesthetic visually of that Godzilla the Ride. From a logical perspective, I think it's a bigger jump in the world building than I would have expected the next movie to take. I think Hedorah makes more sense. I think Anguirus makes more sense. I think Biollante makes more sense. I think a brand new monster could make more sense. I think a second Godzilla could make more sense. But the guy who's going to bring in the biggest box office hauls probably is Mothra or King Ghidorah. So from a logical marketing perspective, feels the safest play to say King Ghidorah. And the -0 equals Monster Zero thing, which has been agreed upon, like other people are seeing this theory and agreeing with it, that does make some level of sense to me. I could see how they could go down that route. I don't know how he would fit the world of Minus One. Is he going to be an alien arriving from space? In fact, I thought it was such a non-idea that when I put together a list of all the monsters I thought Godzilla could fight in a Minus One sequel, I ruled Ghidorah out immediately, thinking that he wouldn't fight Ghidorah in the sequel, only to have a bunch of comments be like, I think you're wrong. I think Ghidorah could very well likely be the villain. I suppose it could happen. Ghidorah is not a monster I think fits the aesthetic of Minus One's realism, but could be done right. I don't know how it would play into the story with Noriko at all. It would feel like it would almost move very much away from that story. I also would worry that Ghidorah, historically, whenever he's used, positions Godzilla as something more of a hero, which I do not want to happen. I really think if you're going to stick with Godzilla in this Minus One universe, he needs to stay as the symbol of despair upon despair that he represented before. But with Yamazaki's favorite Godzilla film being GMK, or one of his all-time favorites being GMK, with actually 2 of his 4 favorites being movies with King Ghidorah, Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, his first ever Godzilla film, and GMK, I could very much see them going the direction of Ghidorah. Also, GMK does a great job of keeping Godzilla as the villain while still using Ghidorah, although I do not want Ghidorah to be the hero in this context either. I do not think there should be any heroes in the Minus One universe. No monster heroes. I don't think that should be the way this universe goes. It completely undercuts the whole idea of that first film. In a way more meaningfully, I think, than the original movie, as Godzilla more directly represents a personal trauma. Itoya Nekohachi also speculated that the Zero is clearly Monster Zero, saying everybody knows Monster Zero, aka King Ghidorah. And then Empire Magazine also does. Empire Magazine wrote an article about the title card reveal, where they speculate that Zero could refer to Monster Zero. Another reason why it might not is because Monster Zero is the US title, like Godzilla vs. Monster Zero was the US title for Invasion of Astro Monster, although he is called Monster Zero in the film itself. Like, he is called Monster Zero in the Japanese version as well. So it is possible, you know, Monster Zero has been the nickname for King Ghidorah since 1965. It is possible. I feel like it is more well known in the United States though. Same with like Godzilla King of the Monsters referring to King Ghidorah as Monster Zero, but it has been around since 1965. It's been part of the King Ghidorah mythos since almost pretty much his inception. I'm not going to rule it out. In fact, I found that to be the most compelling theory out of all of them. So I don't know where to stand, because on the one hand, Yamazaki has already expressed interest in Hedorah, and I was putting all my eggs in the Hedorah basket, and I immediately saw Hedorah when I saw the title card reveal. But on the other hand, I find the Ghidorah connection to be much more compelling. But I leave that to you guys. You gotta decide what you find compelling for yourself. Finally here, that same Empire magazine article speculates that Godzilla Minus Zero will release in late 2026 or early 2027, the exact range we already knew it was going to release. That's the same range Bloomberg released for this movie, saying that the sequel to Godzilla Minus One will release in late 2026 or early 2027. Same range there. Still bumping into Supernova if you release in 2027, so it seems very likely that they're going 2026. If I had to guess, they're going to try and copy the Minus One release date as closely as possible, so I would guess November 6th, 2026 will be the release date, as that's the first Friday following November 3rd in 2026. So that's my theory. But what do you guys think? What do you think about the title Godzilla Minus Zero? What do you think about the theory that the oxygen destroyer's in there? What do you think about the Hedorah theory, or the woman praying, or even the Monster Zero theory? Comment down below and let me know. What do you think about the movie's potential release date? And what are you most excited about heading into Godzilla Minus Zero? I would love to keep this conversation going with you guys. And again, subscribe because I've got much more coverage to come. As always, I want to give a huge thank you to my patrons over on Patreon. It is through the support of the patrons on Patreon that I'm able to continue to make videos like this for you. If you want to support the Patreon, you can use the link in the description below, where you can get early access to content, access to the Discord community, and more. If that's such a thing, please consider joining as a channel member. I'd really appreciate it. Thank you guys all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I will see you all next time for the next one. D-Man out.